Just the other day, there were reports, and I see it when my kids come home from school. There were reports about the bullying and the increase in bullying in our schools. There were reports of kids who are Latino being told by other kids, build a wall. There were reports of 8- and 9-year-old Muslim children, little kids, being called terrorists. That is not the kind of world, that is not the kind of country that we're about, and that's not the country I want my kids to grow up into. And Bernie Sanders understood that, and he told us, you know what, the country is in trouble, and that we don't have to stand for status quo. That we didn't have to work in the system that's happening because the system doesn't work. And he energized us. And we hope that Bernie would be our candidate. But Bernie, because he is a smart man, because he has a huge heart, and he's an incredible strategist, what did he do? He didn't pack up his bags when he couldn't win. He said, what am I going to do next for this country, for our children? And at that National Democratic Convention, I was so proud to be a Bernie supporter because he stood up and he did the right thing. He endorsed Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And he said that even on her worst day, she's better than Trump on his best day. And then he didn't stop there. He went and did the work behind it. He went and made sure with all of us, because as Bernie will tell you, it wasn't just him, it was everybody behind him, that we had the most progressive platform and the Democratic Party has had in decades. He made sure that TPP was on the agenda and the message was sent that we're not going to stand for bad trade deals, that we deserve fair trade. He stood up and he moved the oppressive agenda in Secretary of State Clinton on public education, on college, on the environment. And he did all that because he knew that he had to stay in the fight for all of our children. So how do we honor Bernie Sanders? It's not by voting for Jill Stein or any other third-party candidate. It's by standing with him and making sure that we're all with her and that we make sure, like every Democratic candidate out there, I don't care who they are, to make sure that they uphold our progressive agenda, to make sure that our children have a better world to walk into, and make sure that no damn TPP happens in this country, not now and not ever. So I want to personally thank Bernie Sanders because my kids were pretty angry about my job over the last year, but it was him who re-energized my kids and they understood what we were fighting about in a whole new way. He is their hero. In fact, they're going to be so mad that they're not here today, so no one tweeted out. But on behalf of my family, Senator Sanders, on behalf of my children, and on behalf of my late husband who loved you, I want to thank you, and let's give a big UAW welcome to Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you, brothers and sisters. And before I begin, I want to thank Cindy Estrada, not only for the support that she gave me during my campaign, but her extraordinary efforts on behalf of the working class of this country. Cindy, thanks so much for all that you have done. I want to begin by telling a little story. Last night, we got into Detroit late. We wanted to get something to eat. We ended up in a diner a few miles away from here. And the waitress, I would say, was 65 or 70. And I chatted with her. And we talked, and it turns out that she had worked in some of the assembly lines right near here. And she was a member of the UAW. And she said that she was so proud because being in the union gave her a wonderful pension and gave her today excellent health care. She loved people. She wanted to keep working. But her retirement was secure. So I come before you in this hallowed building. I know history. I know the role that the UAW and the other great unions of America have played in helping to create the American middle class, in helping to fight racism. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank all of you for what you have done for this country. And you and I know that we need a strong labor movement to create a strong middle class. And we are not going to let Trump and right-wing Republicans destroy the American labor movement. We are going to pass a new Employee Free Choice Act. We're going to grow the trade union movement. There are millions of workers out there who want to belong to a union. They have a right to belong to a union, and we're going to make it possible for them to belong to a union, to negotiate decent contracts. Now, in my view, this campaign has, and the media has played a bad role in focusing on personality. So I want to make it clear. This campaign is not a personality contest. All right? We're not voting for class president of our high school. Oh, she's my friend, I'm going to vote for her. This is not what this campaign is about. We are fighting, and what this campaign is about is for the survival of the American middle class. Now, I read the polls. I understand that neither Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump are particularly popular. I get that. But forget about that for a moment. Take a hard look at the agendas of the campaign, what these candidates stand for. This campaign, I know this is a radical idea. Media will be shocked. This campaign is not about Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. It is about you and your families and your kids. It is about Cindy Estrada's kids and my grandchildren and your parents and the working families of America. That is what this campaign is about. And let's just talk a little bit about the proposals that Mr. Trump has, that Secretary Clinton has. As Cindy just told you, we are living in an era of massive, massive income and wealth inequality. It is immoral, it is unsustainable, and it is un-American when the top 1/10 of 1% now own almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. While the middle class shrinks, while we have 43 million people living in poverty, while we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth, while in my city of Burlington, Vermont, and right here in Michigan, you got elderly people a few miles away from here trying to make it on $11,000 or $12,000 a year. They can't make it on $11,000 or $12,000. They don't have a UAW pension. Yet in the last 16 years, we have seen a tenfold increase in the number of billionaires in America. We've gone from 51 to over 500 billionaires in America. We need an economy that works for the middle class and the working families, not the top 1%. You know, I have gone all over the country talking about a rigged economy. And yet in one day, Donald Trump did more than I have done in a year to tell the American people how corrupt the political system is, how corrupt our tax system is, how rigged our economy is. In one day, we learned that a multi-billionaire, a man who owns mansions all over the world, a man who prides himself, who boasts how rich he is, how much he has, he does not pay a nickel in federal income taxes. And he's proud of that, because he thinks we could just stiff the middle class. You pay taxes, you pay taxes. Hey, billionaires in America, they own the system. Why do they have to pay taxes when they can get you to pay taxes? Well, we got a message for Mr. Trump and the Koch brothers and the other billionaires. Hillary Clinton is going to get elected president, and they are going to start paying their fair share of taxes. And it's not just individuals. You got a scandal of extraordinary magnitude. Corporation after corporation is setting up in the Cayman Islands these phony companies and not paying a nickel in federal income tax. And then these people, after not paying income tax, after not paying corporate taxes, then their lobbyists come to Washington and they say, oh, we have a deficit. You got to cut Social Security. You got to cut Medicare. You got to cut Medicaid. We together, with the union movement leading us, we are going to change national priorities. We're going to have a government working for us, not just the 1%. Now, Cindy Estrada touched on this, and I want to reiterate it. Here is my great fear. Not too many people talk about it publicly. What I worry about very much, as the father of 4 and the grandfather of 7, I worry that this country is moving every single day closer and closer to an oligarchic form of society, not the kind of democracy that we need and that we love. We are seeing our economy controlled by smaller and smaller numbers of people, the incredible power of Wall Street and the large financial institutions whose business model, as we just learned again, and we've learned it again and again and again, Wells Fargo, fraud, Bank of America, fraud, Goldman Sachs, fraud. The Democratic platform that we helped to write says that it is about time to break up these large financial institutions. And we're going to see that platform implemented. But the billionaire control of America is not just in the economy. As a result of this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, what we are seeing right now are the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, and these other multi-billionaires literally trying to buy the United States government. That's what they're doing. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars all over this country. Turn on your TV and you see an ad. Understand who is paying for that ad. It's not some phony front group, citizens for this, citizens for that. It is the Koch brothers, it is Sheldon Adelson. It is people who believe that we should end Social Security, cut Medicare, cut Medicaid, cut the programs for the children. I just was out campaigning with Hillary last week in New Hampshire. We chatted a bit. And she said that I should tell you that within the first 100 days of her administration, she will introduce a constitutional amendment to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. Now, I may be old-fashioned, But I happen to believe that in a democracy, what makes a democracy great is we don't have to agree with each other. You disagree with me, somebody wants to vote for Trump, that's fine. But what a democracy is about is one person, one vote. You got to vote, you got to vote, you got to vote. It is not about billionaires buying elections. And I'll tell you what else it is not. It is not about cowardly Republican governors and legislatures trying to suppress the vote. You know, I have run for office in Vermont a number of times, and honest to God, it has never occurred to me, not for 1 second, to figure out how I can try to stop people who might be voting against me from participating in the political process. That's not democracy. People who do that are political cowards. They don't have the guts, for good reason, to stand on their ideas. So the only way they win elections is making it hard for poor people or people of color or old people to participate in the political process. And I say to those cowards, if you can't stand on your ideas, if you can't win an election based on what you believe in, if you got to keep people from voting because they're going to vote against you, you know, you should get out of politics and get another job. Now, I believe that the vast majority of the American people understand that there is something wrong when we are the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee health care to all people as a right. Now, we have made some progress under the Affordable Care Act. Another 18 to 20 million people have health insurance. That's a good thing. What Donald Trump's response to the fact that we have 28 million who are still uninsured and more who are underinsured, his response is to throw those 18, 20 million people off of health insurance. And I asked Mr. Trump and I asked the Republican leaders, what happens to 20 million people who lose their health insurance? How many of those people are going to die? How many of those people are going to suffer and become a lot sicker than they should have to be? And they have no answer at all. Hillary Clinton wants to expand health care coverage in America. I was here, I see John Conyers here. John and I, thank you, John, for all of your work. John and I were together a couple of years ago. We were in Detroit, and we had a town meeting. And we met with some young people, because I wanted to get a sense of what's going on with young people around the country. We came to Detroit. Never forget this. And we talked to some young people who are working at McDonald's. Now, I don't know if they've raised, have you raised the minimum wage here in Detroit, in Michigan? Still 7.25? 8.50 now. All right. Well, anyhow, when I talked to them, it's 8.50 now, it's gone up? All right. A couple of years ago, talked to these young people making $7.25 an hour. And they couldn't even get 40 hours a week. They were getting 20 hours a week at one McDonald's, 20 hours at the next McDonald's, working 3 McDonald's, taking a bus to get there. So let me tell you what you already know. A federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is a starvation wage. Hillary Clinton understands that. She wants to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. It is not a radical idea to say that anybody in America who works 40 hours a week should not be living in poverty. That's Clinton's view. That's my view. Donald Trump doesn't even have the guts to take on the Republican Party and demand that the minimum wage go up. Hillary Clinton understands that in the year 2016, it is a bit absurd that women are making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. And Hillary understands that we need to pass legislation making sure that we have pay equity for women in this country. Now, my Republicans, we have to be kind to our Republican friends because they suffer from an unusual disease. It's called amnesia. And they forgot about where we were 8 years ago. Easy to criticize Obama, that's easy, but a little bit harder to remember the state of the economy when Obama came into office. We do not forget what trickle-down economics was about. We do not forget the state of the auto industry 8 years ago. We do not forget that 800,000 Americans a month were losing their jobs, that we were running up a $1.4 trillion deficit, that the American and international financial system was on the verge of collapse. That's what trickle-down economics that Trump wants to bring back. That's what they left us 8 years ago with. But we know that instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, we have got to invest in working families and in our children. And that is why, while we have made gains, after 8 years of Bush, we were minus 400,000 private sector jobs. 8 years of Obama were over 11 million private sector jobs. All right? So we've made progress, but everybody in this room knows that tens of millions of working people are still hurting. In my state, people are working not one job, they're working 2 or 3 jobs to cobble together some income that they need and some health care. Wages are too low. Unemployment is too high. We have got to create millions of decent-paying jobs in this country. And what Hillary Clinton understands is the fastest way to do that is to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our water systems. Now, last time I was in Michigan during my campaign, I went to Flint, and I will not relate to you what all of you know, the horror that has taken place in Flint, the children who have been damaged. It was a very emotional. I met privately with some of the parents there, and I left that meeting shaking. I could not believe that in the United States of America in the year 2016, children are being poisoned because we have an infrastructure that is collapsing. And it's not just Flint. There are water systems all across this country where people are turning on the faucet and the water that's coming out is not drinkable. This is America. We should not have a second-rate infrastructure. We should have the best in the world. We can create millions of jobs rebuilding those water systems, our roads, our bridges, our rail system. And Hillary Clinton has a plan to do that. And Hillary Clinton also understands that 30, 40 years ago, if you had a high school degree, you could go out and you can get yourself a pretty good job. But that world has changed. Technology has changed. Education has changed. So that today, when we talk about public education, and I went to public school from kindergarten to high school, but when we talk about public education, it cannot be any longer first grade through 12th grade. We need to make public colleges and universities, we need to make vocational training after high school tuition free. The United States used to have the best educated workforce in the world. We no longer do. And let me tell you the simple truth. Our economy is not going to do well. We're not going to have decent jobs Our standard of living is not going to go up unless we do have the best educated workforce in the world. And what that means is instead of giving tax breaks to Donald Trump and the other billionaires, instead of allowing large multinational corporations to set up in the Cayman Islands and not pay a nickel in federal taxes, we're going to change that. We're going to invest in our workers and in our young people, and we're going to make public colleges and universities and post-high school education tuition free. Hillary Clinton also understands that our criminal justice system is broken. She understands that there is something profoundly wrong when we have more people in jail than any other major country, any other country on earth. China, 4 times our size. And yet we have more people in jail than China. 2.2 million Americans, disproportionately African American, Latino, Native American. We're spending $80 billion a year to lock up fellow Americans. And what Hillary understands, what I understand, and what you understand, is that it is much more important to invest in education and jobs for our kids rather than jails and incarceration. John Conyers and I, just a couple of years ago, we understood that in communities, whether it's Vermont or Detroit, wherever, we have too many kids who are unemployed, too many kids who are not in school, too many kids who are hanging out on street corners getting into trouble. And what John and I did is put together legislation which said we are going to get jobs for those young people. We're going to get them an income. We're going to get them education. We're going to give them some constructive alternatives so they can lead productive lives and not end up in jail. And Hillary Clinton understands, as I do, that the American people are tired of looking at those videos of unarmed African Americans being shot by police officers. She understands, as I do, that lethal force should be the last response, not the first response. That police officers, the vast majority of them who are honest and hardworking, need the training to deal with people who have mental illness. Hillary Clinton also understands, as I think we all do, that when we have 11 million undocumented people in this country, people living in fear, people living in the shadows, it is time for comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. Now, I understand that Donald Trump talks a whole lot about trade. He doesn't like NAFTA and he doesn't like China. So I say to Mr. Trump, instead of just talking, why don't you do something meaningful? Yes. Instead of just telling us how bad these trade agreements are, and I voted against all of them, why don't you lead by example? Why don't you start manufacturing your products here in the United States, not in Bangladesh? Trump has manufacturing plants in Bangladesh where, as I understand it, he is paying workers 30 cents an hour. Don't tell me about your love of the American worker when you're exploiting poor people in Bangladesh. Bring those plants back to America. Trump is manufacturing his ties, not my tie, but he's manufacturing his ties in China, his clothing in Mexico, his furniture in Turkey. Mr. Trump, you can be an American hero. Become a model for your fellow billionaires. Bring those plants back to America. I am in a building of the UAW, a union that has led the effort in so many areas, whether it is health care, whether it's education, whether it's affordable housing. But there's one area where they have really shown leadership ever since their inception, and that is the fight against racism. Now, I disagree with Mr. Trump on his economic policies, on his environmental policies, on his health care policies, on his education. I disagree with him on almost everything. But, hey, people have disagreements, and that's fine. But, Mr. Trump's campaign is different than any campaign in the modern history of our country for one reason. It's not his economic policies. It's not his environmental policies. The reason that Trump's campaign is particularly dangerous and un-American is that he has made the cornerstone of his campaign bigotry. Yes. All of us know the history of the United States, and we're so proud to be Americans. My father came to this country from Poland without a nickel in his pocket. Never made much money, but he was the proudest person that you could know because he saw the opportunity that his kids had that he never would have had in a poor community in Poland. And that's the story of so many people. This country started with settlers coming in. They did terrible things to Native Americans. You all know that. We as a nation have gone through the abomination of slavery and racism and discrimination. 100 years ago, women, we forget this, the kids don't know this. 100 years ago, women did not have the right to vote. They could not go out and get the jobs they wanted, the education that they wanted. But what the history of America has been is people having incredible courage, going to jail, getting beaten, sometimes dying, to say that we are going to end racism and discrimination in the United States of America. To paraphrase Dr. King, that we're going to judge people based on their character, not the color of their skin or the country that they came from. That's our vision for America. But in this campaign, what Trump is trying to do, trying to win votes by dividing us up, by insulting our Latino brothers and sisters, by insulting the Muslim community, by every day hurling insults at women that I can't even repeat. I would be embarrassed if I got them down here, but I'm not going to repeat them. My wife would kill me. I mean, this is the year 2016. We have come a long way, but we all know we still have a longer way to go to end discrimination, to end sexism, to end racism. And yet this man is running a campaign trying to divide us up. And I want to say this, because sometimes I think people don't remember it. Before Trump became a candidate for president, he was the leader, one of the leaders of the birther movement. Let us be very clear about what that movement was about. That movement was not disagreeing with President Obama. Everybody has the right to disagree with anybody they want. What that movement was very clearly about was trying to undermine the legitimacy of the first African-American president in our history. It was a racist attack. That's what it was. So I say to my fellow Americans who come from every part of the world, our beauty, our strength as a nation is in fact our diversity. I'll bet you that within this room, we can trace our ancestry to 100 countries all over the world. And what we have understood is that in diversity there is strength. We learn from each other. We grow together. So I say to my Republican friends, to independents, to anybody, we can disagree on issues. That's called democracy. But we cannot elect a president of the United States whose cornerstone for this campaign is dividing us up and getting us to hate each other. That is not what America is about and never will be about. Let me conclude by saying what I do not have to say in this Union Hall, because you know it better than I do. Change always takes place from the bottom on up, never from the top down. Pictures on the walls in this Union Hall show workers getting beaten because they stood up to form unions. And workers were killed standing up, fighting for unions. Americans were killed, went to jail, fighting for civil rights, fighting for women's rights. Change does not and never has come overnight. What we have got to do, it seems to me, in the next 5 weeks is, number one, make sure that Donald Trump and his bigotry does not become President of the United States. We have got to elect Hillary Clinton as president. But what we also understand, because we in this room have been involved in a lot of struggles over a lot of years, we understand that politics does not end on Election Day. So if anybody here thinks, well, we're going to elect Hillary Clinton and then go back to sleep for another 4 years, you got it wrong. Our job is to take on a greedy, powerful 1% who wants it all. It's to take on Wall Street, whose greed and illegal behavior drove this country into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. It's to take on the greed of the pharmaceutical industry, who are charging us the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. And the only way I know as to how you take on the wealthy and the powerful are the lessons that I learned from the UAW and the other great unions in this country. We organize, we educate, we stand together. After the primary process ended, Secretary Clinton's campaign and my campaign came together, and we worked on and passed the most progressive Democratic platform in the history of American politics. And the day after Hillary Clinton is elected president, our job is to make sure that that platform is implemented. This country, if I have learned anything from my campaign, and again, I want to thank all of you who supported me, but if I have learned anything from my campaign from coast to coast, is there are millions of beautiful people who understand that the future of America is standing together, is working together, is guaranteeing health care to all, educational opportunity to all, decent paying jobs to all, not having a handful of greedy billionaires controlling our economy and political life. So in 5 weeks, on November 8th, let us elect Hillary Clinton as our next president. And the day after, let us go forward to transform this country with Hillary as our president. Thank you all very much.
If we could have all staff and UAW members meet in Hall A. All staff and UAW members meet in Hall A. Thank you.